Hey, it's Karlie.
Hey, it's Shamina.
And we're
Emotionful. What's up, everybody?
what's up? So first, let's thank our patrons, Kevin Gallagher, Therese Gallagher, and Joanne Stewart. Thank you. And if anyone else wants to join to be shouted out, check out our Patreon page, Emotionful Podcast.
Yes, please do. Or like us on YouTube, subscribe below, DM us, follow us on Instagram, Emotionful Pod, like us on Facebook, Emotionful Podcast. Can you remember when we were like, we're gonna do Twitter and we're gonna do, wasn't there like something else that we were gonna try? TikTok, yeah. And that was like a lot. I don't know how people, I mean, they probably have like a team doing all that stuff for them, but that's a full-time job.
Honestly, I give props to people who are like influencers and use social media like that because I have no idea what I'm doing. I mean, Shamina can vouch. I'm not like a technological person, and I barely could figure out how to record a TikTok, let alone add like all the special features that people do. I don't understand.
I know. I just started doing like the reels on our Instagram page, and
So good. I saw that and I was like, love it.
and I have to like YouTube like how to make them like look super cool and stuff, because that's just so much extra work that I don't want to do. I just want to like upload it and like we're good to go.
I know it does look good.
So
but, yes.
Today we are talking about family dynamics. We could spend like a whole season talking about family dynamics.
What'd you say?
Said we could spend a whole season talking about family dynamics.
Say everyone has them in some way, some form. They're there.
Always. So, are you guys ready to get emotionally full?
Are you?
Are you?
Are you?
Are you?
Are you?
We should do that. We should like say it differently every single time we say it.
We learn something every day.
We do. So what do we want to get into with like the family dynamics? Because I know we talked about it in our last episode of like, oh, we should do an episode about family dynamics, and then here we are doing an episode about family dynamics.
I mean, man, I think we could talk about anything. I think people don't realize how difficult maintaining family dynamics is. Whether it's good, bad, indifferent, it doesn't matter. Like, I think that was like an epiphany that I've had like with my therapist of like, when you think about it, trying to like have a relationship like as a family, a group dynamic is just so difficult. And it really, really is. And like, I feel like sometimes people don't think about it because it's like, oh, that's my family. But like, you're a whole bunch of individual humans trying to cohabitate, even if you don't live together. And that's hard. That is hard.
Yeah. Well, even when we were younger, and most of us do live with our parental figures, you know, I think you and I were talking about that. I don't remember if it was like on the last podcast or just in like our personal talk, but you know, like we have siblings and we used to like live with these people, and you're like, my siblings have, these are the people who have known me my whole life. And you know, my brother lives in a different state, and sometimes like I talk to him or we'll do like a family FaceTime, and I'm like, I have a brother. Like that's a thing, because I usually don't see him that often, but so sometimes I feel like I'm an only child because, you know, I'm just in this little world, or, you know, I may not talk to my mom that often. Then I'm like, I have a mom. Like that's a thing.
Well, yeah, like we've created our own lives, and like I think about that too, and I feel like recently actually I've been reflecting a lot like on my relationships with my siblings, and I think about like I was thinking about that too, like as when we were younger, we would argue and everything, but it was always like kind of like I don't want to say in the playful manner because like we would get angry with each other, but now that we're older and like we're more mature, it's just the dynamic is even more interesting, and it is mind blowing to think that I grew up with these individuals. We lived together in the same house for 18 years or so, and now we kind of each have our own lives and like we catch up with each other like when we can, but like you said, it's like you're my blood. Like you've seen it. It's just really interesting how like not only like the family dynamics in general, but then each individual dynamic, whether it's like with your parents or your guardians or your siblings, or how those even change as we get older and mature and just, you know, create our own life, because essentially that's what it is, like I think about that too. Like I I have brothers, I have parents, but I also am living this life on my own and taking care of myself. And
Yeah. I think it's just like an existentially wild concept to just, conceptualize. And I was doing a family FaceTime call. I think it was like last weekend, sometime with my family, and we were talking about, if I do ever have kids or if I ever don't have kids. And my grandfather had said something, and he was like, well, if you don't ever have kids, you're not going to be able to do this in 50 years with your family. And I thought, yeah, I will. Like, I'll have my brother, I'll have his family, I got my niece. If they have any more children, like I will create this family, my family of choice, even if I don't have this biological family.
yeah, I think that's true. And like I a lot of like I've been telling people like, I don't like Florida, it's so hot, and they're like, why don't you leave? And I was like, well, because my brothers are having kids now, and like to me, like I want to be around my nieces and nephew. And I think when I think about it, it's like, it makes you sad. It's like I kind of it's weird because like you want that relationship you had with your siblings when you were younger, but it's like that's not possible anymore because like we're grown and we have our own lives, and it's just like I've been reflecting on my family, I feel like, a lot lately, so like it's extra whatever for me right now, but it's just it's just crazy. Like, yeah, like the relationship is just so like you were the brother we got in a fight and you threw a banana at me and the banana peel sat on the wall for hours until mom got home, and it's like we can't have those fights anymore. you
Which
know
which your eldest or your middle brother threw the banana?
my middle brother. And then one time we got into a Lysol fight and we were literally spraying cans of Lysol at each other, which probably wasn't good for us, but like, just like stupid things like that. But now it's not like that.
But it could be.
No. We don't live together. I don't think they're just gonna come over and drive to me to have a Lysol fight.
I mean, just wait till their kids get old enough and you have Lysol fights with them.
Yeah, that's true.
Also, don't have Lysol fights with children. That's a chemical hazard. Just a
You
disclaimer.
You probably shouldn't have Lysol fights with anyone.
Yes.
It's a chemical hazard for anyone, no matter how old you are. But yes, especially children.
Yes, we do not recommend, not endorsing that at all.
The things you did, though.
Let's see if I can think of something that I used to do with my brother. I got nothing.
Yes, you do.
My brother, okay. My brother is older than me, so I'm the youngest. And I can remember my brother our rooms were like next to each other when we were growing up. And my brother used to come into my room all the time. And he would just start singing and dancing. And it was just it was just ridiculous. And he'd have like his friends over and he'd just come into my room and singing and dancing, or like I'd have friends over and he would just like bust in. And and I thought I was like, gosh, you were so annoying. And I knew in the back of my mind, the second you move out to college, I am going to miss these interactions that we have. Did I ever admit that to him? Absolutely not. Have I admitted that to him to this day? Probably not. But that was something that I used to, I think as I got older, like I appreciated it, and like we had the same taste in music. So we would like jam out together, or I would like show him something. And I was trying to play all like big brother's ruining my day, but secretly I was like, this is fun and I like this.
And it's funny because I feel like our siblings, if we have any, they're probably the most annoying people that we know, but they're probably the people that we also love the most. And it's the most interesting thing. I feel like if you don't have siblings, it's hard to understand that. But it's like, bro, you piss me off, but you want to go hang out and watch a movie and just chill together, you know? Um, but I remember when my oldest brother went off to college and I was so sad. And I made him like, I filled a shoebox full of like school supplies for him.
No.
I was gonna miss him so. I think I was in 6th grade. I was like super young, but um, yeah, like it's funny. It's just funny because now he's like 34 and has a child of his own, and it's like I knew you when you were like 9, you
Yeah.
know.
I knew you before the wife and the kid.
Yeah, like they're the only ones I that knows you like you. There's no front. You don't put no front up for your siblings. Not they they got the real you.
Yeah. I think I'm excited as an aunt or auntie to like talk to my niece about my brother, like when we were younger, like, your dad did X, Y, or Z, or, your dad used to say blah, 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 blah. And I think it's just wild, like this whole concept of, I knew my brother before his wife or before he had a kid, and now I get to share like those memories and those moments with his wife and with his daughter. And that's just like wild to me.
I When my oldest brother met his wife, I was very jealous because I felt like she was taking him away from me. And so it took a while for me to warm up to her. And then I feel like with my middle brother, with his partner now, I feel I feel like with my middle brother, I'm like very protective of him because of something he had gone through in the past, that now I'm always very like skeptical of his partners, and I'm like, you better treat him right, and I'm not just gonna accept you because you got to prove yourself, because the one person that I did accept failed me, so I'm not gonna let you pull the wool over my eyes again. So I think, at least, I mean, they're with their partners now for a while, but I think definitely the middle brother, I think for a while I was a little skeptical of the current one, just because, nothing on her, but because of the past, that I was like, I gotta feel you out. I gotta make sure I gotta make sure you're good.
Little sis got to protect.
Always. So
That's too funny.
I know.
There was something. Oh, so our brothers, your middle brother and my brother, because I only have one of those, um, went to high school together, and
As
they were, yes, and they were close. And both of your brother and my brother had my mom as a teacher in high school. And I remember the first, okay, you've heard this story, but our viewers have not. So
is this
Karlie's,
talking trash about me?
yes. So Karlie's middle brother, we knew that Karlie was going to be in my mom's class, and I was also going to be in the same class. And he had warned us about Karlie ahead of time. He was like, she's really annoying, she's really loud, she talks a lot. So my mom and I were sitting in our statistics class. This was my sophomore year of high school, I think.
I think so.
And we're just kind of like, okay, we're waiting for like this obnoxious person to walk into the room. And then here comes Karlie, and she's all bubbly and happy and excited. And I can remember my mom was like, what was he talking about? She is not any of those things. She is a delight. And even in high school, people thought that you were my mom's daughter and that I was like not related because you look just like my mom and I look like not my mom. And everybody was like, are you adopted? No, I'm not. But I hated that.
Do you remember that one? I just have to ask real quick. This isn't family dynamics. In a way. Do you remember that time that we went on vacation and someone asked if we were twins?
Maybe I think we had just cut our hair again, so maybe it was like the short hair thing. But
but
fraternal twins.
Yeah, we have to be. But
yeah, I do remember that. That was funny. But anyway, your brother was wrong about you, and here we are, however many, 10, 12 years later.
I know. I remember your mom telling that story, and your mom was like, and then you came in and you were like, hey, how's your day going? And whatever. But I was like,
and the rest is history.
The rest. But I feel like that's what siblings do. Like they humble you. Siblings will humble you.
Yeah. I used to write. I was like really into writing when I was younger. And I remember I did a homework assignment for my brother. He was going to the community college at the time. It was a dual enrollment class and he hated English. So I was like, let me do it, turn it in and give me my grade. And I got an A+ on it. And I had it hung up like in my bedroom because I was like, look at that. I think I was in middle school at the time, but I was like, I can do college level work and get good grades. And I think he ended up telling his teacher that I was the one that did it, but
ooh, I would not have admitted that. Not the same, but my middle brother, when I was super young, read through my diary once when we were on vacation. I was very young, so I wrote something stupid and I hid it in the microwave of the hotel. And I just remember the next day he said something like really specific to what I wrote in the diary. And I was like, oh, you read my diary. And like, I remember I was so pissed. And I like went to my mom and my mom was just like, don't read her diary. And like, I was like, okay. So I think that honestly stopped me from like writing in a diary for a while because I was like, he's gonna read what I say.
What a unique hiding place in the microwave.
We were in a hotel. I didn't have many options, bro. I thought the microwave was clever.
That's funny. All right, I want to pull up some family roles here and just kind of talk about them because I go over this stuff a lot with my clients. They're technically called like dysfunctional family roles. So a lot of times when we have family dynamics, it can be very healthy, but I think more times than not, we do see a lot of dysfunction in families. And so we all assume a different kind of role. And it's almost kind of like a machine. Every role has its part to play. And if somebody steps out of their role, the machine kind of breaks and it doesn't know what to do. And it wants to be back to its homeostatic function. Like family dynamics want to stay unchanging. They don't like change because then everybody else in the dynamic has to change. So I want to kind of go over.
Now, would you say dysfunction within family dynamics is expected?
No.
Really? I feel like it is because like I mean, it's not wanted, but I feel like it's almost expected because of how difficult it is to associate like in that sense, and like, you know, like I'm not saying like you want it, but I feel like it's most likely there.
I think it I get what you're saying, but I also, so this is like the therapy part of me thinking of, but if we knew about like communication styles or these family roles, and we raise we build a family with that, compared to a family who just has like the traditional quote unquote values, or like how to discipline or how things are raised, or that whole like let's sweep everything under the rug and we don't talk about it kind of thing, then I think that has a higher likelihood of dysfunction than a family who's more emotionally intelligent and emotionally well adjusted. Does that make
But what
sense?
do you think is average? Like
I
in
don't know.
reality?
I mean, people become like licensed marriage and family therapists. So there's like a whole profession that deals with like family dynamics. So I think it is very common because I had to go to school because I have a degree, I have a graduate degree in marriage and family therapy. So I know a lot about like the systems theory and these dynamics, but a lot of us don't actually recognize what's happening. But what if we were educated, or what if we were aware of these things, kind of just like with the mental health or with the emotions that we always talk about. So I think it's more common, quote unquote, that we see the dysfunction just because of culture or generational norms, traditions, values, and that we're starting to break those cycles and become more emotionally intelligent and emotionally aware. Makes
Yeah,
sense?
I mean, ideally, we'd be aware, like you said, we'd be able to communicate. But I just think realistically, there's probably a lot of dysfunctional family systems out there. And I don't want to say that's okay, but it's okay. You know, like it's okay to acknowledge that and like try to build. But like Shamina had said, in a family system, it's not just one person that can change. The way to change it would be everyone has to make a change for it to improve in a healthy manner.
Yeah. And I think part of like the roles that I'm going to go over is, like a dysfunctional piece, but also even if it was like a healthy, quote unquote, family, you may see these things just because of people's personality types, the way, the communication styles within the home, those kinds of things. So that's something to just kind of keep in mind too, is that these may naturally, quote unquote, again, occur because of somebody's personality style or type or parenting style, those kinds of things. So this first role is the golden child. And I think this one is like really, really common. It's basically like the favorite, the one that can do no wrong, the perfect child. This one gets compared to, why can't you be more like your brother? Or why can't you do this like your sister kind of thing? Um, and this is a really, really hard role to be in because there is a high level of expectation associated with that role. Like you can do no wrong, or if you do make a mistake, it's like the end of the world because you don't make mistakes, you do everything right, you do everything perfect. We're trying to get these other children to achieve what you have achieved, so there's a lot of pressure and expectation that gets put into that particular role.
Is there a common sibling number for that? Like firstborn, secondborn, third, last?
Oh gosh, you're making me go into, probably, I can't recall. I know like with certain birth orders, there's more like likelihood, like the firstborn could contribute to like these traits, or the youngest can contribute to that. I don't know it offhand, but I do believe that there is. I want to say, I think the oldest is usually associated with like the golden child because they like set the standard, and then as like you have more children and the expectation gets a little lower or it gets a little lower. So I want to say oldest, but don't quote me on it.
I'm quoting you.
No. The next one, this is basically the opposite of golden child, but this is the scapegoat. So that is the one who gets blamed for everything. They get blamed for family problems. They may have like acting out behaviors or disobedience, or they're the ones with like the mental, I'm doing air quotes, mental health issues that kind of draw attention to them. They're the terms are like troublemaker, scapegoat, or black sheep, and they tend to be kind of ostracized from the rest of the family. We see this a lot, or I see this a lot as a therapist with parents who want their kids to come into therapy. And I hear that, like, if I had $1 for every time somebody, like, I heard this phrase, I'd be rich, but like, they are the problem. You have to, and they don't say it in like these terms, but like, you need to fix their behavior and then the rest of us will be fine. So they're almost kind of like this identified patient, so to speak. And all of the accountability and all of the like the family's issues get thrown onto them, and then they kind of like act out with this behavior, or and then it gets like reinforced of like, see, this is why we have problems, because you have bad grades, or you keep getting in trouble, or you do this or you do that. If you just behaved, then everything would be fine. But it's like super rare that ever happens.
This is why everyone needs therapy.
I'm a big proponent.
Me too, girl.
Okay, the next one is the lost child. So I'm like reading this off of a website because I don't know these by memory, but basically the lost child is kind of like the middle child syndrome. So the golden child gets a lot of the attention and the troublemaker gets a lot of the attention. So the lost child, just as like just as the name says, kind of gets put on the wayside, or isn't as like, can feel left behind, gets less attention. And so they tend to have like strong feelings of like loneliness or craving like love and attention, which may kind of extend into adulthood. And they're kind of seen, or they're unseen, unheard, just kind of like in the background, so to speak. And a lot of times with that type of mentality, my emotions aren't important, or how I'm feeling doesn't matter, because my golden child sibling, that's more important. They have to get the good grades, or my younger sibling just gets in trouble all the time and mom and dad just focus on that kind of thing. So they tend to just kind of like skate through and stay undetected, so to speak. So we see that a lot with like middle, like that whole like middle child syndrome, like, oh, you're the forgotten child, you're the middle child kind of thing. But that does tend to occur in a lot of family dynamics with 3 children.
I don't know.
So that's the lost child. The peacemaker or the mediator. This is me. I am one of those people. So as you can tell, just from the name, this role, they kind of like mediate arguments. They stay, you might get like triangulated into parental arguments and like having to pick a side. This role in this child tends to not have like personal needs. They tend to put other people's needs before their own, because they need to like maintain the peace, keep the household. And they get very good at like reading the room, or being able to identify how other people are feeling so they can adapt accordingly. Let's say mom has a very like volatile temper, and if the house isn't clean, mom like goes off and yells at everybody. So they may be a lot more aware and attuned to like, what does the house look like? Mom's about to come home. How do we make sure that like this does not happen? Kind of keep the peace. And that can create a lot of being over parentified as a child and kind of worrying more about like other people's needs or assuming like that caretaker role kind of thing. So that one's a fun one.
Yeah.
Not really. Okay. And then I'm almost done. There's not too many left. There's the mascot or the clown. So this is the one who like lightens the mood when things are getting really tense within the family, or like problems or arguments are arising, or like mom and dad are fighting, and then that person like cracks a joke or slices the tension in order to decrease conflict. So this is kind of like another role, like the peacemaker. They have to like read the room, being good at being able to gauge levels of tension. In adulthood, they may have a really hard time connecting with negative emotions or conflict, or they use humor to deflect it because that's what they've done for most of their lives. Which one are you? Have I said yours yet?
I think I'd be the mediator.
Yes, I would agree. From what I know about you. Okay.
Oh, were you asking our audience?
No, I was asking you.
Oh, okay.
The next one. So these go into a lot more in depth than like just kind of the basic. But this is the caretaker or the enabler. Me. I assume multiple roles. Again, this is one who like takes on responsibilities of other members in the family, tries to save them from consequences. I think we see a lot of this with like older siblings trying to protect the younger siblings from, abuse or harm, or even being another parental figure. Like, I've gone through this, let me help you do this. Usually the desire to help is like, well, intention, but it causes more harm than good because you are taking responsibility for other people's choices and they don't get to make their own mistakes or learn from them.
Interesting.
And then let's see. I don't really care for the other two. I guess I can go over them. But the next one is like doer. So this is like the member of the family that takes action and gets things done. This is kind of like the stereotypical mom who like schedules meals, cooks, that's meals, cooks, household chores, different things like that. Again, let's say like you have a parent who wasn't emotionally present and you had to take on the responsibilities to care for your younger siblings, or had a parent who's like working all the time and they weren't physically there to care for the household. So you just kind of assume that role. I think that can kind of go into like the caretaker role and seems similar to me. So
that's a lot.
It is a lot.
Now, you can have several roles.
I think your roles can definitely change throughout different like developmental periods, or even, like one sibling goes and leaves the house and then the role may shift. Because let's say you were the middle child and then the oldest child leaves for college. Now you are the oldest in the household, so your role may change and switch.
Mm-hmm. But is it common, I guess, that one person has several roles? Or is it like just at different times you're different roles, but you typically only have one role at each period of time, whether it's changing or not?
I would say you usually have one role that you kind of assume and you stick with. And if like life stressors or changes or even family dynamics start to change, you may like adapt characteristics of another one or assume more. But it's not like, oh, I'm the golden child and I'm the caretaker, but that can also kind of go. So there may be some fluidity between the roles. Like, you're the golden child, you're the oldest, everybody looks up to you, but you're also responsible for taking care of your siblings because mom and dad are working a lot, or there's abuse in the home and you have to kind of care for them. So I think it just depends on the family dynamic and the circumstance.
So you are like you went to school and everything for that, but then you decided you didn't like that. Why?
So I do work with families. I
Oh.
don't work with couples. I do not like couples work, but I didn't get licensed in, because I could have been a licensed mental health counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And that's originally what I wanted. I was like, I want two titles after my name. But I didn't do that initially because my supervisor for licensure wasn't eligible to supervise like the marriage and family side of my degree, but they could supervise the mental health side. So I just went and like pursued that. And I like it. I don't really like family um, therapy either. I can do it, and I'll do it to the best of my ability. I don't prefer it. I'm not like, yes, let's do family, because there are so many more dynamics. It changes even the role as the therapist, like just by adding another person into the room. So it's a lot more active, and it's really challenging. And I think being a younger therapist, I get challenged a lot more on family dynamics than I would if I was a seasoned or older therapist. And I'm not about that life. So,
Yeah, I just feel like it'd be really hard to like control the room, you know? Like I just feel like if a family's getting into something, I don't know.
it's interesting. And we learned, some like techniques of like what happens. I remember I had one professor, we were like, what happens if like everybody's yelling? Like, you're not going to yell too. Like, what do you do? And he was like, I start to get really quiet and I whisper, because then everybody else has to stop yelling and stop talking in order to hear me. And I was like, yo, that's that's like gold right there. And a lot of people do that with kids too. Like if their kids are starting to yell, like they'll lower their voice because then the kid has to be quiet in order to listen to them. So it is a very different style of therapy, even the way that you ask like questions and how to interact with each family member. I think it's really great to learn though, because even if you're working with individuals, you're still dealing with like the systems and these relationship dynamics. So I think the education piece is really valuable as a therapist, because it's very rare that I ever work with an individual and we aren't talking about like family dynamics or something connected to a potential role that they're playing or things that they've learned through their family.
Yeah, well, when you were saying the yelling thing, my mom was a preschool teacher. And so when her kids would yell, she'd be like, what is it that you want? And I was like, that's another reason why I know I'm not meant for that, because I'd be like, yo. But yeah, it's interest dynamics, man. They are, everyone's different. Like every individual is different, but every dynamic that you're going to experience is different. And it's just like really interesting concept. I guess. Stop it.
What is she doing?
She wants my attention, and so she's just like um yeah, I just think that like I'm just reflecting again on like how much you as an individual you change as you're growing older and whatever, but then looping that into your dynamic, your family dynamic that you have, and just like how everything is different and how you handle things differently. Like when I was a kid, if I got mad at my brothers, we just like throw things at each other. But like as a 27-year-old, I can't really do that. I mean, I could, but I don't think that'd be the most mature way to handle it. And so, yeah, just It's funny. It's funny, funny, funny.
It is, and there's so many different dynamics because you come from more of like a nuclear family, like your parents are still married. I came from a divorced and then blended family when my mom remarried, and that was like a whole new set of dynamics because you have to get used to this whole other person, this whole other parental figure, and people have, children from other families that they're blending in, or they adopt, or they have their own kids with their new spouse. And so there's just so many different moving parts to family dynamics. And it's not just, we have to figure out how to like coexist. It's communication styles and boundaries and roles and all the complicated things that we don't talk about or we don't know to talk about.
And like you said, like it never goes away. Like, yeah, you may not communicate with like your blood family or whatever, but like at the end of the day, like they're still there. And they're, you may not communicate with them now, but I'm sure at one point you did, because they raised you, or whoever raised you, I would assume, is what you would kind of consider like your family dynamics until you get to a certain point. But so they have an impact on how you were raised and how you are the way you are today. Like it's like what's that called, where it's like the impact, like it's
The
like not
butterfly effect, the butterfly effect. Is that
I
what
don't
it's
know.
called? The
I don't
ripple
know.
effect. I don't
Yeah,
know.
the ripple effect. How it's like, it might not be in your face right here and today, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have an effect on you.
Mm. Indeed.
And I think it's interesting too, as we get older, we start to realize certain things that we didn't notice or acknowledge as children based on our family. That's really interesting.
Yes. Or you've known what it is, and then you go to therapy, and your therapist is like, yeah, this is what it's called, and this is what you do about it. And you're like, whoa, this is crazy. I've worked with a lot of clients who they felt really crazy because nobody, would validate their experience with their family. Or I talk a lot about, this like unhealthy family loyalty, like, well, that's your mom or that's your whoever. And so you have to maintain a relationship. You have to do this, you have to do that. But anybody who's ever experienced like trauma or just like severe family dysfunctioning knows, like, no, I don't. I can set that boundary. Just because they're my parent doesn't mean that I have to maintain any type of relationship with them. But we live in this culture where that is like frowned upon, or people are like, you haven't spoken to your mom in 10 years. What's wrong with you? She's going to pass away and you're going to regret it. Okay, but what if she, abused you when you were
Mm-hmm.
younger? And some people recover from that and they're able to heal, other people aren't. And that's okay, either choice that you do make.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I don't like that mentality of the, well, that's your family, you have to maintain some type of relationship with them. No,
I
you
think
don't.
that's a very old school like thought process. And I think like as new generations are coming about, and as they're being more in tune with mental health and things like that, I think that the newer generations are more of like, I don't care if you're my blood, if you're going to treat me a certain way, I'm not going to. And I think it's fun. It even comes down to like even something as simple as like weddings, like it'll be like, you didn't invite your fourth, fifth, sixth cousin removed. And it's like, no, I didn't. Or like, like you're expected to invite every single aunt and uncle that's alive and well. And it's like, okay, but I haven't talked to them since I was 12,
Right.
like, so, but I think again, that is like the older thought process of like, if you're not talking to them, or if they're family, you just kind of like close your eyes to maybe how they treat you or certain things like that, because that's your uncle or that's your cousin. And it's like, now I think people are starting to be like, I don't care. I don't care if that's my cousin, my uncle, my mom, my dad, my sister.
Yeah, there's definitely a movement that's starting to shift.
But I think there is the movement that's starting to shift, but there's still that kind of like guilt because you know you still are told like that's my family.
Oh yeah,
And so it is very difficult, but you got to do what's best for you.
absolutely. Or go see a therapist and figure it out with your therapist.
2022, let's all get into therapy.
What a good goal.
Hit us up every time you go to therapy for the first time. Send us a DM and say I did it.
That would be so cool.
Right? I
That
would
would be
like that.
super cool. I would like that.
But I think at the end of the day, it's okay if you're struggling or you like feel like you have a challenging family dynamic, because I think that that's kind of common and you can only do so much. But like just remembering that if everyone's not willing to make a change, you can only do so much. So like don't beat yourself up over it and just do what you can.
Yes. And even if you have like a healthy family, if there hasn't been any trauma or things like that, the dynamics can still be really challenging. And again, you're just navigating multiple people within a household. You know, it's like you get a whole group of friends together, and is everybody going to get along? Is everybody going to do the same thing? Like personalities just clash, let alone, you know, you put in like dysfunctional dynamics, but it's just a difference in personality or, you know, again, communication style, those types of things. And that has such an impact.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
don't know.
you said the word that I think I've been thinking for all night, navigating. Like, and like you said, I think like think about it. You said it right. Navigating even just a friend group is difficult. But then imagine putting on that pressure that this is your blood and these people raised you, or you grew up with these people. I think that adds an additional pressure. So then trying to navigate with that and then different personalities, it's a lot. It's a lot. So
So do the best you can and go to therapy if you feel like you need additional support with it, because that shit is hard. And we all have
yes.
family dynamics, whether there's trauma, whether it's just a personality difference, whether it's communication styles difference, or even a difference in values.
Mm-hmm. Do what works for you. So,
Are you feeling full yet?
are you?
Are you?
Are you?
Are you?
Okay, okay.
What do we want to hear from our viewers about?
Maybe what you feel like your role is, or I don't know. Yeah, what you feel like your role is. I just feel like there's so many things when it comes to family dynamics.
Yeah. Tell us what you think your role is that you have assumed in your family. We want to know.
Let us know. Until next time.
We will see you all same time, same place next week.
Bye.
Bye.